This is like, no, like you legitimately put your opponent in the position every turn, from like turn 4 on in some cases, where you're like, you have to have the best card every turn for the next 3 turns, or the game is legitimately already over.
It's a little bit more forgiving. You get to experience those swings and variants that are inherent in a card game, but then you get to be able to claw them back. In a best of 2, you're really saying that every single game counts.
But that combo that you're talking about, it really is like a damned if you do, damned if you don't moment for your opponent. We're like, yeah, draw a card. I dare you. Go ahead.
Being a powerful card and then also promoting very degenerate and like uninteractable play patterns. When I think about banlists in a card game, that's where my head goes to. So it's that kind of play patterns that I really think would make Whole New World the first bannable card.
He was one of the cards that when I first looked at the list, I'm like, yeah, I would probably cut that card immediately. And then I just gave it a try. I played some games with it. I'm just like, I don't know. He has a purpose.
The best reason to play Emerald Steel discard is that it can beat any deck in the game.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Forbidden Mountain. Today, I have a special guest, the winner of the 5K in SCG Atlanta. How are you doing this even, Ryan Effin Miles? How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, Dan. How you doing today?
Great. It's a Monday evening. You are fresh off the win this weekend. We got this done quick, which is awesome. Sometimes it's really difficult. I respect a lot of people's time because, I know what it's like to go to a tournament, play all weekend, be tired, get home. Last thing we do is like come and talk about it sometimes. But hey, you're here. You're excited, which is great.
Yeah, I think for me, the first thing I want to do is talk about it, while it's still fresh and the excitement's still there. Just get all the thoughts out now while it's good.
That's fair. That's fair. I don't know. I don't mind reminiscing every once in a while. It's always cool to come back to it. But all right, so let's just talk about the weekend itself, right? So this weekend was unfortunately the first time where we didn't have a 1K on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't have that preparation day that we kind of can get in. The last couple events we were able to get in on Friday, test the waters a little bit, make decisions. So there were side events on Friday. Did you play any of the side events?
I did play in both of them, and I did win both of them. So, like, my match record over the weekend is like 16-0. Just like I didn't drop a match all weekend, but like the side events were a little bit more casual. I did play against James Gray in every single event and in top cut of the 5K. So I played him 5 times over the weekend. He was on Red Blue.
By default, he is your arch nemesis.
I think I'm his arch nemesis
because I'm saying. Yeah.
It was just a bad matchup for him. He was on Red Blue and I'm on Emerald Steel, and it's like it's definitely winnable, but like I am still like pretty favored, and I think it definitely showed with the results. But it was really funny, like playing him the first event, and then it was like, oh, okay, good game, and then the second event, it's like, oh, hey, again, how you doing? Oh, I beat you. And then in the 5K, it's like, what are we doing, man? Is this really what we're doing? And then like by the 5th time, it's like, okay, I give up. Like.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, hey, it's I've had those weekends too where I've even in Philly, I played the same person like in round 4 2 days in a row. It's just like, how did this happen? Like, what?
Yep.
It is what it is. So it is weird, seeing that. But so you had a good, obviously you started good on Friday.
Yep.
And then we got really good and we started really well. And obviously I think now if remind me if I'm wrong, but you were 4-0 going into the top, like basically you were able to draw into top 8, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Both of the events I started whatever XO was, and then I ID'd the last 2 rounds. So on the 5K it was 4-0, and then the 1K was 3-0.
Okay. So talk to me about your deck a little bit here. Why did we end up, choosing Emerald Steel for the weekend?
Emerald Steel was a deck that I thought was really cool, like when the set dropped, because Ursula being able to sing all of the Steel songs just felt like one of the most powerful things that Ursula would be doing. Like I thought that was where Ursula would shine the most over like green purple. And then the Steel song lists felt like, or I'm sorry, the green Steel list that we did see felt really, really good into red purple with like the Bucky and the Floodborn stuff. But like I really didn't like Bucky with Wheel. I don't really like playing Wheel personally, or a Whole New World. It's just not something I've really enjoyed in this game. So I didn't really stick with the green Steel list, and I kind of felt like it was just really bad at the start of the set. But once I saw like the Specky list and like these more aggressive Prince John stuff, I'm like, oh, okay, this is what I want to be doing. Let me see what my take on this is going to be. And yeah, overall, just kind of took the Specky list, or the one that got 4th at the Georgia 8K, I think it was.
Actually, it was the Pixelborn online tournament, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, 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 that's the one. I know the deck list name was really, really long. It's like, I got this list from Specky, and I'm just like, "Alright,
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is,
yeah,
like, what I
yeah. It
wanna
was
be
crazy
doing."
long.
Yeah, it's not playing Bucky, it's playing the Prince John. It's got,
Yeah.
some of the stuff I didn't really love, but I played a couple of games at locals, and I was really glad that I was able to play those side events on Friday because I did make a couple of changes going into Saturday, and that's why you see some of these really weird one-ofs. Like, I was playing 4 Donald Duck and then 3 Friar Tuck initially, and I was like, "This is too many Donalds, this is too many Friars," and I was like,
Right.
"With these 2 slots that I've got, do I wanna play Lucifer? Do I wanna play Hypnotize? Or do I wanna play Robin Hood?" And I couldn't decide, but
You apparently said yes.
yeah, I just said one of each, and we'll just see what happens. So it was kinda like a I'm not it's not like the best decision to go into a 5K, but I'm like, I'm still trying to I'm not, like, trying to win. I know I'm a good enough player that I could do it, but I just wanna, like, get more information, get, more reps on the deck going into, like, the set challenges, going into the Ravensburger event. So I'm like, I'll just play one of each. It's fine. We'll see what works. I think Lucifer was, like, really good because I played against Red Blue a couple of times, and that card, like, overperformed against Red Blue. The
Mhm.
Robin Hood was like ink every time. I just never got to the 6 mana, and the Hypnotize was great. So the Hypnotize is staying in the deck. The Lucifer being uninkable probably doesn't make the cut moving forward, but like those were the main things. Um, and yeah, the Donald Ducks I think are the one thing that I've got in the deck that most people aren't playing. I know a lot of people are on Tiana right now, and I get it. I think it's really good in Steel Song, but it's not really where I would want to be just because it's uninkable. But the Donald Duck being able to act like another copy of the Beast and let you
Mhm.
draw cards, and then also like making your opponent draw a card, and then
Mhm.
you get to discard it for them, and just like
Yep.
keep getting your own value out of this. Because like even Sudden Chill, like if they just always play 0 cards in here, it's a completely dead card. But if
Yeah.
they take the draw with Donald Duck, you still got your draw, and then you get to rip their hand. If you have a Prince John, it's even better.
Yeah.
So Donald Duck is just like the all star. This is where this deck is starting to feel really, really good.
I will say in the beginning of the Inklands metagame, that Bucky deck that you were talking about, a lot of those lists did have Donald Ducks.
Yeah, because he's
And it
clunky.
was kind of that same concept of like, hey, you can draw a card, but I'm probably just gonna play a Floodborn and make you discard it. And then like I don't at that time we didn't have Prince John. So when I first looked at your list, there were two things that really stood out to me because this was a list that I spent a lot of time on last week. Actually, the same day that you were playing it in Atlanta, I was playing it here, and the 2 card combo I had seen that I really loved was Zeus.
Hmm.
I didn't have any Zeuses in my list, and I didn't have Donalds, but I wasn't playing Zeuses because I was only playing Friars or Friar
Hmm.
or whatever the hell you pronounce his name. And I was like, man, I really like Along Came Zeus, but there's not enough 4 costs. You're probably not really, so when I saw yours, I was like, okay, so it was like we have the Friars, we have the Ducks, and we have the Daisies.
Hmm.
That's plenty of stuff that we can sing Zeus with. So that's awesome. But that combo that you're talking about, it really is like a damned if you do, damned if you don't moment for your opponent. We're like, yeah, draw a card. I dare you.
Yeah, most of the time people just weren't doing it. They were like, "I see what's going on here," and I'm like, That's great that you're not drawing
Yeah,
a card, like,
yeah.
it's not it's better for you, but it's also
Oh yeah,
like, I'm still getting so much value out of the card.
yeah. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, Howling Mind's a pretty good card, and if your opponent's not taking it, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
exactly. No, 100%.
The other thing about this list in general is like it really feels like it has a layered attack to it.
Mhm,
So the concept here that you have this early game assault, like obviously the Flins and the Curse are for your more aggressive game styles, kind of like when you're on the play, forcing your opponent to interact with you, utilizing Prince John with the combo effect of this. But then even when you're on the draw, like you have the Captain Hook Smee line that punishes so many things in the game. And of course, I mean, Smee's good literally all the time. Like that's for being honest. Like the card's just kind of insane.
yeah,
But
100%.
what I really think that's interesting and intrigues me about this is that it is kind of an all-out combo. And I think if you really start talking about some of the best decks in the game, Amber Steel, Ruby Amethyst, these decks all have modes. And depending on the game, like literally depending on the matchup, depending on play draw, you have different lines that attack different decks. And I think this deck that you have here kind of showcases that skill as well, which I really, really loved. How'd you feel about some of those matchups?
Yeah, I really agree with what you're saying, where it almost feels like red purple, where it has those different modes that it gets to play, where it gets to sometimes be the control deck, where it's just a full discard. Like, I'm not even questing with my board until I see Prince John. I'm using
Literally.
Ursula to get information. I'm trying to get your hand to 0 cards, and then I'm trying to like really start putting on the gas. And then being on the player of the draw, whether or not you're playing a Prince John game plan, or if you're on the draw, you're playing the Ursula game plan and trying to take back board control. If you're on the play, you're doing Merfolk, Flynn Rider. If you're on the draw, you're doing Captain Hook Smee stuff. Like Captain Hook is like one of the weaker cards in the deck, but it's like just so good going second because it stops your opponent from trying to get that lead going. So if you
Doing
can
like
stall the
literally
game,
anything.
yeah, if you can, even if you just like stall the game at like 0 lore to 0 lore for a while, so many things in this deck quest for 2 that a lot of times I would just like sneak in some lore here, get to like 6, and then say, okay, you have 0 cards in hand now. I quest my whole board. I go to 12. And they're like, oh, I have to kill your board. And then it's like, yeah, every card I draw has 2 lore on it. Like, I will
Yeah.
just, like, you just kind of get in situations where you're just like, my top decks are better than yours because they all quest for 2. And it
Yeah.
really just like felt like you could take this Hail Mary as long as you get to 12 or 14 lore, you would just win the game. And it requires such specific top decks from your opponent to be able to even not lose on the spot. But even if they do find those perfect top decks to not lose on the spot, they have to keep ripping them again and
Right.
again and again to not just, die over the course of a couple of turns. And especially against decks like Red Purple, where a lot of them aren't playing Minnie Mouse some of the time. Some of them cut teeth in ambitions and they're just like not questing aggressively. When they're at 6 or 7 lore and you're up to 14, off the top of the deck, you're going to win every time. And it's just like,
Yeah.
it's so crazy how good this deck is at closing out games while also just playing a control role with the steel songs in the discard.
Yeah. And of course, this is something that I had said a couple weeks ago, but when you really got into this list and you would realize that Prince John and Ursula are the greatest 1A, 1B, because more often than not, we didn't even really, like, we talked about the Ursula Deceiver, but on the games when you play her on 2, it basically just helps you formulate the rest of the game. For not the rest of the game, let's just say the next 3-4 turns,
Yeah.
where you're like, okay, I know what my opponent's doing, and because I have this information now, I can now play the best cards moving forward. And sometimes it's Ursula on 3, sometimes it's Prince John on 3, sometimes it's Prince John then Ursula, Ursula then Prince John. It's gonna always fluctuate. But the fact is that you have that ability. Like, you literally have this crazy ability to play 2 of the most powerful 3-cost cards in the game with like perfect information.
No, absolutely. Like, both of those cards feel so obscene. Like, the more you play with them, the more you're like, how is this allowed? Because so many decks just don't have answers for them, and like some color
No.
combinations just don't have answers like on curve at all. Like,
Yeah.
when you get to like untap with an Ursula or untap with a Prince John, it just feels so crazy. I know, like in one of my matches against Blue Red, I like had an Ursula and then I played a Prince John on 4, and my turn 5 was like sing Sudden Chill, play Lucifer, play Sudden Chill. Just literally
Uh,
5 cards out of their hand gone on the spot, and it's just like, what is
the
this
game is
is so
over. I mean,
unfair,
like,
like it's
literally, the game is
crazy.
over.
Yeah, it's
Like,
crazy
you just
how
win.
and like I had 0 lore. Like, I'm an aggro deck, but I'm just like, I'm not doing anything. I'm playing Ursula, I'm passing. I'm playing King John, I'm Prince John, I'm passing, and then I win the game on turn 5. I'm at 0 lore, but you can't come back from that. It's just
No,
crazy stuff like that where it gets to play that kind of access. Yeah.
yeah, especially those decks, like those decks that, like, aside from A Whole New World, which is the only one that's going to ever even attempt to like revamp back to the game. Not to mention a card like Grab Your Sword is another card that can kind of hurt you.
Yep.
But that's the only type of deck that can really come back from that layer of destruction.
Yeah, blue red kind of can. That deck was like really scary. It's a really good matchup, but when they rip the Hiram off the top in like those top 6 situations, they can clear your board quickly and then have the gas to keep doing it. So
Yeah.
that's like the scary situation where I think they like it's a good matchup, but like it's very winnable for blue red. But like most of the
Yeah.
time, you do come out on top.
I feel like it's one of those, like, the die roll is somewhat important, because if they can hit the quill early and kind of get up there, then they can kind of turn into the world where they can just be prepared you off the top, and then you're both playing off the top, and like they have a lot more resources than you on average that are just bombs. But most of the time, when you're on the play, you can actually just prevent them from even getting to 7.
Yeah.
And then, like, because if they commit too much to the quill, then you just strip the rest of their hand. They're just like, now they're playing the whole game off the top of the deck. And you're like, all right, if you live in this world where you get to draw high rim, popsicle, then you got me.
Yeah, one of the funny things is after playing against James Gray so many times was that he just, like, stopped playing Fishbone Quill, and he would just, like, ink it early, and it's just
Yeah,
like, yeah, you really can't afford to be doing that in this matchup,
yeah,
and the scariest thing against Red Blue, like and again, because I played him so many times, we really got, like, to know the back and forth of the matchup, and it was really cool, but it was the one jump into Grandma Tala on turn 3, where Grandma Tala
yeah,
is, like, the 3/3, and the
yeah.
3/3 kills everything in my deck, so it's, like, a good enough
Literally
body to,
everything.
like, just do it, but it's the fact that like they're on turn 4, they're getting a card, and they're putting a guy on board that is going to contest my stuff. Maui comes down on 5, Medusa comes down on 6, Be
Yep.
Prepared comes down on 7. They're no longer ramping; they're just like playing a game, like a mid-range game plan, but they're doing it a turn ahead of me. And
Yeah,
those were the scariest games for Blue Red. But otherwise, outside of that, like Fishbone Quill, like you said, they don't get to play their normal game plan. So if you
no.
are a Blue Red player and you're not really familiar with the matchup, it's very easy to just get run over.
Yeah, yeah. You have to make pretty important pivots. Another one that I found that's really important is when you play your high rim, you don't actually pop your popsicle. You're supposed to leave it, and then when you quest, you draw because you're more likely to actually be able to use the cards that you drew. I think
Yeah,
that's
no,
a
it
nice
depends
little
if your hand's
tidbit
empty or
for
not. Yeah.
players. Yeah. So we talked about this a little bit briefly, but you have the 4 cost suite here.
Hmm.
Now, in the traditional, especially list, there are no a long game Zeus in any of them, and definitely no Donalds. So what like what really brought that to you to the forefront for you?
Zeus just seemed like too good of a card to not play.
So good.
One of the biggest things I was playing two Rise of the Titans because
Okay.
locations are definitely like
Yeah, they're awful.
locations aren't an issue. Like you'll outrace locations. Like I don't care about your McDuck Manor. I don't care about your Queen's Castle. I don't care about the two lore. But once you start putting guys on Queen's Castle and you're
Yeah.
drawing like 2 or 3 cards on your turn and you get to
Right.
play them all, that's when I start having a problem. So
Yeah.
Zeus was just like a nice like okay, I don't want your 5 health guy to just eat my board every turn. I want to be able to have an answer for it.
Yeah.
And it is like
Same
kind
thing
of
with
one of the
like
weaker cards
Beast.
in the deck. Sorry, what was that?
Yeah, like Beast.
Hmm.
Just like occasional tragic heroes. You're like, you know what? Just no. Like, just
Yeah.
get rid of that problem.
Yeah, pretty much. It just felt like I needed something, and it's funny because most of the time I don't think I sang Zeus. Like it's usually just like I'm ahead on board. Like I've got my Ursula and I've got my John. I just want to kill your thing that you paid 4 mana for, and I'll pay 4 mana to do it, and then just quest
Yeah.
out. It was never like
Yeah.
I'm like if I had a 4 drop on board, I was usually like questing with it to get two
Yeah. You would
lore
rather
and then
just have the
pay.
2 lore. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny that even though I am higher on the 4 drops, I was still spending the ink to actually cast the Zeus more often than not. And yeah, it's just like a very solid card where it's just dealing with so many things that need to be dealt with. And then yeah,
Fair.
Donald Duck I think is just absolutely crazy. Just another 3 copies of Beast. And then like Friar Tuck versus Daisy, I like Daisy more.
Yeah.
But that one less health is like so obscenely relevant. Where
Yeah.
just having a 2/3 is a lot worse than having a 2/4 because the way the games kind of pan out, they play their 1 drop, they play their 2 drop, they play their 3 drop, and then their hand's empty. So
Yeah.
anything that has like more than 3 power is going to come off the top, but the board that they already have established is going to be the 3/3s and like the Merlin
Yeah.
Rabbit, sometimes Goat, sometimes Fox. Just like usually 3 power, sorry, 3 toughness on Daisy is going to die to the board that's existing once I get their hand empty, where Friar Tuck will actually usually survive an attack. And that just like came
Yeah.
up a lot in like testing the deck where I think Friar's discard ability is significantly worse, but that
Yeah.
extra HP does matter a lot.
Yeah, it's his ability is like super awkward sometimes too, because any of the times where you're like, hey, I just have more cards than you now, so this
Yeah.
is like, well, ink will it goes.
Hmm.
I will say, and this is probably just a lack of experience of playing the game. I felt that the way and like Friar Tuck works, I almost felt myself committing too much to be able to get his ability also.
Hmm.
So that could be a problem for players if they're like, oh, I got to get everything I can out of my cards. And you're just like, you know what? Like, I should probably just ink this and not try that hard and have better cards in my hand throughout the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Definitely one thing. How did you feel about, we talked about it a little bit, but for me, the 6 cost Robin Hood, uh, it's like the weirdest card ever in this deck because it does a lot of things that you really wanted to do, right? It closes out games, which is great. It dodges Medusa. It dodges World's Greatest Criminal Mind. Not that like you're really super worried about that, but it does dodge it.
Yep.
And most of the time you have random crap left over, so it gets around Lady Tremaine also on occasion. So like, where are you at after the weekend with that card?
After the weekend, I ended up cutting it. I never hit the board. It was ink every
Oh,
time. Yeah.
okay.
So the thought process was just like it's just a completely gas top deck. You do get to 6 ink pretty reliably. You're not
Yeah.
like usually closing out the game before then. But I just kept drawing too early and going into ink. And the more I thought about it, the more that like 6 ink does happen, but it doesn't happen on curve like ever. Like usually
Mm.
you get to 5 ink on turn 5 or maybe turn 6. Like you might delay it one turn based on like how the game's going, but the 6 ink is usually delayed like one or more turns. Like you're not getting to 6 ink until turn 7, turn 8, like something like that.
Depending how
So
many cards you drew with Prince John.
yeah, it's really like you're looking at like a 3 card hand. You're like, I only have 5 drops in my hand. I don't need to play it now. I'm fine playing this 4 drop, so I'll save my hand and see what I'm going to ink later.
Mhm.
So like that extra cost really ended up just being like, okay, this guy's ink because if I top deck a beast, I want to be able to play it.
Yeah.
After that event on the Sunday event, I swapped the Robin Hood out for a Ray, the evasive 3/3 that
Oh,
quests for 3. And
yeah.
even though it dies to Medusa, which is where I didn't want to play it initially, the evasive text matters so much, and just costing one less and being able to come down not just one turn earlier because you're thinking on curve, but it's really 2 to 3 turns earlier, just because getting your 6th ink does take a little bit to like rebuild those resources and kind of get the Johns going. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I ended up with I think Ray is going to be better. I don't think I'll go back to Robin Hood, but like you said, he has like so much good going for him. I wanted him to be
Yeah.
good, but just
He's
those
got
situations never came up.
he was one of the cards that when I first looked at the list, I'm like, yeah, I would probably cut that card immediately. And then
Yeah,
I just gave it a try. I played some games with it. I'm just like, I don't know. He has a purpose.
he does. Yeah, it's just like
He,
sometimes
I was
doesn't
like,
get there.
he really does check a lot of boxes that you don't think about until you're in the moment. You're like, oh well, I don't know what they can do to stop this poor lore. Like just
Yeah.
send it. So I don't know, a little bit different.
I think if you're really looking for that 4 lore guy, it's probably the Floodborn Flynn Rider. I think that card is
Yeah,
probably something that I want to experiment
he's
with.
also evasive.
Yeah,
I guess there's a world where you shift and things like that. I think you're right. But he's also uninkable, right?
he is also uninkable,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
So
Yeah,
that's where I think that becomes problematic. But he
yeah,
does fill that role. But he also still dies to Medusa and things like that. That's what I thought the interesting thing about the card was the fact that it could dodge Medusa and it doesn't give any more credence to World's Greatest Criminal Minds. So like
yep,
those two cards that can be problematic cards for you, you're just like this card dodges both of those things, and
yep,
he's just like what do they do to him? Like obviously he dies to Zeus, but most things do. What are you gonna do?
yeah.
All right, so we're at the point now where I like to play a little game, and the game's called Repeat After Me. All
Okay,
right, so I'm gonna say a line, and then you're gonna repeat the line with the answer.
okay,
All right, cool.
you got it.
The best part about winning SCG Atlanta was.
The best part about winning SCG Atlanta was winning after I wanted to split every single round of top 8, and my opponents kept wanting to not split. So in top 8, I'm like, "Hey guys, you want to split?" And someone's like, "Nope." I'm like, "Okay, I guess I'll win." All right, go to top 4. "Hey guys, you want to split?" "Nope." "Okay, I guess I'll win." Go to finals. "Hey Kendall, you want to split?" "No." "Okay, I guess I'll win." So like I dragged kicking and screaming across the finish line pretty much. So I think that was like the best part in the moment. But looking back on it, it's just like nice to kind of get my name out there in the game. I've been playing card games for a very long time, and I know most people don't know who I am, but I like to kind of have this W because after Philly, I was like, man, this game's kind of hard. I hope I'm as good at this as I want to be, and this just felt like
Yeah,
okay, we're hanging with the big dogs, we're making it happen.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's always nice to pick up a win, especially now more than ever, right? We're getting ready for official organized play. Finally
Yep.
starts Friday officially. So like getting out there, having the name recognition, especially a player like yourself. We're going to talk about this a little bit later, but like of your accomplishments in your trading card game career, getting back out there and saying, "Hey, nope, I can hang with anybody in this game as well." I think that's a big deal. So
Yeah.
again, congratulations, you got there.
Thanks, man.
Uh, the best reason to play Emerald Steel Discard is.
The best reason to play Emerald Steel Discard is that it can beat any deck in the game. It's probably the best deck on the draw. Like it's just it feels like red purple all over again, where it has all these flexible ways to do what you need to do. You can shift and adjust what you're doing based on the matchup, but it just feels like it's doing even more unfair things than red purple, where the Ursula singing any song is just so incredibly silly. Prince John just having ward and then drawing you like 4 cards while you're ripping apart your opponent's game is just so incredibly silly. Like it just has such high power gasoline going on, and then it has like two different like tanks. Like you've got the nitrous, and then you've got like the premium diesel, and you just get to pick and choose like, do I need to go around this turn super tight, or do I need to just floor it and hit the grass pedal? Like you could just do anything, and you do it better than almost any other deck. It just feels so absurd. And I'm sure this is like complete bias because I didn't drop a match, but I'm just like, I
Right.
saw like how I could lose, and then the deck would just be like, you can't. Here's two lore off the top of your deck. Okay, here's two lore off the top of your deck, and you just win the game before other people do. And I think, like as I've mentioned online a couple of times now, I feel like the format is like adjusting to be more and more aggressive, especially because red purple doesn't have a lot of questing power. The red blue decks really, struggle with the super aggressive stuff. If you can be more aggressive and take those early leads, like because of the way the game is designed, you can close out those leads very reliably as long as your deck is creature dense. And I think this deck just like really has that power.
Yeah. There's a couple things there that are, they're comical to me, but it is one of those where, like, if you think about how Ruby Amethyst plays its deck, it tries to beat you by drawing, a sufficient amount of more cards than you and just out advantaging you in the end.
Mm-hmm.
This deck is kind of doing the same thing, but in the opposite manner of like, well, I'm just gonna strip everything you can do away.
Yep.
So like, rather than you even having the options to compete with, sometimes Ruby Amethyst might draw 10 cards, but if they're the 10 wrong cards, it doesn't matter if your opponent has the answers.
Yeah.
This is like, no, like you legitimately put your opponent in the position every turn, from like turn 4 on in some cases, where you're like, you have to have the best card every turn for the next 3 turns, or the game is legitimately already over. And I think that is it's a hell of a good reason why, this deck can contend. And it's crazy to me that we went 3 or 4 weeks where Emerald Steel did nothing. I mean, it was like, it was off the face of the earth. It wasn't on anybody's radar. And in the last 3 weeks now, you've seen nothing but success from this particular archetype. So it's pretty sweet. Pretty sweet.
Yeah.
The first thing I think about when I hear the name Dick Burns is...
The first thing I think about when I hear the name Dick Burns is what a cool guy. I just have nothing but love for Dick Burns. I'm really happy that I got to see him in Philly and reconnect with him. And then just like I think like in Philly I had a pretty poor performance, but then I got to like meet up with him and then do some 1Ks over the next couple of weeks and just like talk to him about the game and just like I'd played a little bit in set 1 and I like played in a Denver PPG, but like I hadn't touched the game at all in set 2. So then I came in set 3 and then I saw him and he's like, hey, I did really well in Hartford. And I'm like, oh, you're the person I can talk to ask all these really dumb questions and like get all the garbage out of my brain so I can start learning good Lorcana. And he just like really helped guide me to like the correct way to play the game and get all my thoughts in order, understand like what the meta was, what was looking good, what all the different decks did and why some were good, some were bad, and just like put me on the direction to go, okay, now I can start learning the game and really figuring it out on my own. So I think Dick Burns is just great. I love that guy.
I can't agree more. The difference between Lorcana and other games I played is...
The difference between Lorcana and other games I've played is the combat system, where this game just questing is so much different from everything else. I think the resource system is great, but it's kind of similar to some of the other games that I've played. But the combat, just the questing mechanic is just the most unique thing about it. And I know it's like kind of hard to sell some people on the game because of that, because it's like, oh, everything's unblockable. Isn't aggro just great? And it's like, well, I think so now, but most people don't think so. So like, don't worry about it that much.
Right.
But yeah, that's definitely the most unique part about it. And I think that like the meta is so good right now. Like I think Green Steel might start to sneak out as that front runner, but like you can play 7 different decks and there's just so many things you can do. It just feels like the design team have really balanced most of the cards in a very unique way. And I think it's really well done.
Yeah, I have to agree there. It's been... I mean, 2 months is a long period of time, like in a vacuum. But in February, when we're just every single event is 55-60% Ruby Amethyst because it was a duh for majority of players. Is like there's just no reason to play anything else because of how dumb and stupid this deck is. We've come a hell of a long way from that, thank God.
Yeah.
So it is nice that all of these different decks, even this weekend, the top 4 of 367 player tournament is 4 different decks.
Yep.
Your event was very diverse. The top 8 of that meta was very diverse. So it's nice seeing those things and kind of getting away from a lot of the shades of the past, I would say. So
100%.
I'm with you on that one. The one thing I hope Ravensburger does in future sets is
The one thing I hope Ravensburger does in future sets is give red another identity, because this challenging nonsense, this damage stuff, it's just so hard to get damage on your units reliably. And the only card they've really printed that reliably damages your own stuff that's any good is Teeth, and like Mother Gothel kind of, but that's not. I want to like aggressively damage my own stuff to like damage my opponent's stuff or draw cards or something like that. So I want them to explore that identity in red more, and I want to see this like Shere Khan, Talisman, Queen of Hearts. When I challenge, good things happen. I want to see more out of that, because right now I don't think it's in a very good spot. And red feels
so.
like, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, continue.
Yeah, I'm just like, I think red is like the weakest color overall, but like it has B prep and it has Maui, so it's like the best color. But outside of those like two cards, it's just like, what is red doing? Yeah.
Yeah, actually, it's really funny. We had a conversation about like this today in team chat about the inks, and I agree with you. I would say I don't know, like 85% of Ruby cards are bad.
Yeah.
Like actually just
Aggressively bad.
bad cards. Like they're just like they're so far from playable that you're like, man, how do we get this many of them wrong? You know, and
Mhm.
that's just the testament to what Amethyst does for Ruby, because
Oh yeah.
the consistency that Amethyst brings is it makes everything better in a way. So um it's interesting to hear that route, right? And in I maybe I did a little googling, who knows. Do you have a bit of a design background, right?
I do. Yeah, I helped
Okay.
develop Argent Saga.
All right, there you go. Oh, I know that game.
Yeah.
So if we put our design cap on for a moment here and we
Mhm,
talk about cards like Shere Khan, we talk about I think it's Queen of Hearts, right? Yeah,
mhm.
Queen of Hearts, and then like Talisman. It's like, how many knobs do you think were off from one of those cards being that much more playable? So, like, if Shere Khan gave himself the lore when he challenged, he's obviously a better card, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's
Um,
the
yeah,
thing that I have is that there's no enabler for being able to challenge my opponent's stuff. Like they have to quest to let me to get those effects. And that's like part of the problem is I can build up this board of like, I've got this guy that when I challenge you, I draw a card. I've got this guy that when I challenge, I gain a lore. And then if you just don't quest and we just like build a board and stare at each other and you're just waiting to top deck your like removal piece to remove my Shere Khan or remove my Queen of Hearts, then suddenly you get to quest your whole board, and then I get to untap and I'm like, okay, well, now what do I do? You know, I think
yeah,
that's kind of the lever that we're missing is there needs to be more challenging upright stuff in red, but that's also terrifying. So I'm not really sure what the fix is.
yeah,
But that's like the
yeah,
issue that I see with that kind of stuff.
yeah. So enablers right now are Cinderella,
Yep.
Pinocchio,
Yep.
Pick a Fight.
None of those are Ruby cards. That's the problem.
None of those are Ruby cards. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think you're right. I think it's definitely one of the things in the game. There are a few things in the game that I think by design are so far amiss,
Hmm.
and it's so hard. I mean, it's crazy to think that like for two sets, Emerald was completely unplayed when we're sitting here saying that Emerald Steel might be the best deck in the metagame.
Yeah.
And if you really look at this list, like it's Ursula and it's Cursed Merfolk, right? Like,
Yep.
like I mean, we like Kick Cloud Kicker could probably be anything, right? It doesn't even have to be Kick Cloud Kicker.
Hmm.
Freyr, we've already talked about. Like, you might not even have to play that deck. So,
Yeah.
like, Ursula and Curse Merfolk are two cards that came out that instantly said, "Hey, all of a sudden this deck is real again," right?
Yeah.
So, it's very clear that in one given set they have the ability to take that knob and turn it up. But with some of those things, like you said, there's just so many of those cards they all read the exact same thing. Like
Hmm.
so many of them, you're just like, when am I going to get the payoff? I hear you. That's interesting. I can get
Yeah.
behind those things. All right. So other game we like to play on the channel is a little bit of Would You Rather.
Okay.
These ones are they're nothing crazy, right? We'll just have a little fun. So choose one, best of three, two game format. Tell me why.
I prefer best of three. I understand that like there's time considerations for the like the event that they're doing, and that's probably why this is going on. But best of three, just like it's a little bit more forgiving. You get to experience those swings and variants that are inherent in a card game, but then you get to be able to claw them back. In a best of two, you're really saying that every single game counts. Because
Yeah.
if you do just take, a mull seven and you see no one drop, no two drop, you just lose that game. But in a
Yeah.
best of two, it's like it doesn't matter if you're on the player of the draw, you just now have a loss, and that loss is going to take at least 2 points away from you. We're in a best of three. if you're playing well enough and you are like finding those like 2-0s, then you get to drop a game to variance, and as long as you can pull it back with a 2-0, then you're going to preserve your record and continue topping the tournament. So that's the thing for me, with best of 3. And like I noticed that playing this weekend where like I had a couple games where I just like, oh my god, like I'm playing against, round 1, I feel like my opponent's not a very strong player, but I just lose game 1 on the play because I just turbo bricked, and I'm like, well, now I have to win at least one game on the draw, but I'm able
Right.
to do it because I do have that confidence. But like in a best of 2, that's a draw now. So it's like, here's
Yeah.
my opponent. That's my opponents are only going to get stronger from here on out, but here I'm playing somebody and now I have a draw against them and I can't take that back. So the best of 3 being able to have that variance just matters a lot more to me.
Before we move on, what's your feeling on the bonus point?
I don't like it. Yeah. I think if we're going to say that every game counts, then every game should just count equally. Going
Yeah.
of 2 and then going 2-0 and then, having an extra point because of it just feels a little silly to me.
Okay. I'm in it. I'm in it. Choose one.
Oh my god.
Enchanted Cinderella or Enchanted Lady Tremaine?
Um Enchanted Lady Tremaine, I'm going to say.
All
Yeah.
right. All right.
I like the colors a lot more on that one.
I do. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you impartial to either one of these cards not enchanted?
As far as the art goes or as far as the card goes?
The card goes.
I'm not a Cinderella fan. I think that card is stupid, and I would probably ban it if I had the chance because it makes going first so obscene in Steel Song. I
Okay.
think Lady Tremaine is just really cool. I wish Medusa hadn't been printed just because it like almost stops you from playing Lady Tremaine just because she has 3 attacks. So like when the red purple mirrors started cropping up at the beginning of the format, it was like, wow, Tremaine is so much better because she quests for 2, and I'm so high on cards that quest for 2, but now Medusa just kills my Tremaine, and I'm really sad about it. But I think Tremaine's a lot better. Yeah.
I can respect those things. So, because you brought it up, we'll talk about it. So, a ban list.
Yeah.
The comp rules was released today,
Okay.
and we now have a specific
Yep.
link that says, "Hey, when cards are banned, we're going to go here."
Hmm.
So they have officially acknowledged that there could be a ban list.
Hmm.
Um, we don't have to spend a whole bunch of time on it, but you just mentioned Cinderella because Amber's whatever. Realistically, it is
Yeah.
Amber Steel currently, but it could be Amber whatever in the future. Going first with Cinderella on the play. I mean, your opponent might not play a character
Yeah.
in a game, right?
Hmm.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Is there anything else on your hit list if you could?
I think the number 1 card would be Whole New World. And it's not because like Wheel is just a good effect. Like obviously it is, but it's really that like I shift Queen, I sing Whole New World, I'm on the play, and you get to just completely rip their hand. I think Whole New World is like so good that it's close enough to being bannable by itself, but it's that like turn 2, turn 3 wheel where it's just not reasonable to expect players to play around that at all when wheels can come out that quickly. So for Whole New World, just being a powerful card and then also promoting very degenerate and like uninteractable play patterns. When I think about ban lists in a card game, that's where my head goes to. So it's that kind of play patterns that I really think would make Whole New World the first bannable card.
Um, and like a lot of that is really on the shift mechanic, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if a whole new world was just a 5 cost card
Yep.
that you could only sing on turn 5 or after,
Yep.
it's probably like a fine card,
It's
right?
a very good but not bannable card. But because you
Right.
can play it earlier, ban it.
Right.
Get it
So
out of here.
this is just like in a world where shift does what it does,
Yep.
reduces the cost of a card that is a higher converted mana cost, and that you can do it literally immediately.
Hmm.
That's the core reason, right?
Yeah, I don't even think it would be a bad thing if they like changed the rules of the game and said you can't sing songs unless you have that much ink. Like
Oh,
that only affects the shift case, and like I think that would be better. I think like grab your sword ahead of curve is like really cool and interesting, and it's like annoying that I play green steel and that can happen to me, but like I
sure.
can play around that. But like shift Whole New World, you can't empty your hand that quickly unless your deck is only 1-drops, and then you're losing to grab your sword, and then they're both in the same color and they're both the same thing. They're both songs that you can sing on 5, so there's no playing around both, and it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
I
that's
think that's the actual scary part of the concept of shift too, is that with them both existing at the same exact cost, in the same deck in most cases, where you're like, well, I know how I can beat a whole new world. I can just flood the board, and I can feel good about it, and it'll be great. But then you get punished.
yeah.
And then in the other concept, you're like, well, I know how I can beat grab your sword. I can kind of just like steadily play cards. and then you're punished by the other. So like the
Yep.
fact that they both exist in the same ink, in the same combination, all these same factors, I think does, inevitably lead to a bit of negative play experience. I think we talked about this, the other day with a couple of my friends, where it's like, imagine being a brand new player to the game, sitting down, playing your first game against Amber or Steel.
Yeah.
Like, what player is going to walk away from this game going, yeah, I want to play another one? Like, no, like they're going to
Amber
walk out.
Steel,
They're going to literally walk out the door and never come back to
100%.
Lorcana ever. Okay.
Amber Steel is definitely the most miserable deck to playing against. Like getting my brother into the game and then also getting my girlfriend in the game, like teaching them, here's red purple, here's mid range, here's control, here's green steel. I'm gonna discard your hand, but try and empty it on your own quicker before you attack my Flynn Rider and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, let's play Golden Pixelborn. Oh, that's Steel Song. Just exit out. Let's go to the next game because I don't even know how to tell you what to do against this deck. Like it's just there's
So
no one
good.
way to beat it. It's just if they go first and they open
Yeah.
Cinderella or they open Queen and they're shifting and everything you play dies and then your hand gets like, what are we doing?
It's a miserable experience. I agree with you. All right, we got one more. Choose one, wit or wit out.
Wit.
All right. So for those that are at home, you don't live very far from me. You're about an hour, I think, north of me.
Yep.
And for the common Philadelphia folk, we always talk about with or without in our cheesesteaks. So, what are we, like, American or provolone though?
I'm a provolone guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I
She's
see you.
more South Jersey than me. She swears by Cheese Whiz. Sorry, I've got a Queen's Castle behind me, but my girlfriend's playing video games back there. She swears by Cheese Whiz, but I don't believe in Cheese Whiz. I'm a provolone man myself.
You don't believe in it? Like it doesn't exist? I don't
Like it's
understand.
not cheese. It's goop, right? It's not actually cheese. I know there's heresy living out here, but it's not me.
I'll never forget one time I was traveling for work, and I think I was in like Detroit or something like that. And we went out to eat, and they're like, what do you want? I was like, oh, I'll take fries with whiz, and they're like, what?
Whiz?
Like, what? What is this thing that you speak of? And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right.
Oh yeah.
Never mind.
Yep.
Too funny. So, sir, we talked a lot about Emerald Steel, but let's talk about you. Who is Ryan Miles in Lorcana? Why did we start playing? Where did we come from? What can we learn about Ryan Miles in this interview?
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm Ryan Miles. I've been playing card games for like 15 years now. Started with Yu-Gi-Oh, and then
Those are rookie numbers.
yeah. Started with Yu-Gi-Oh, which is the worst game to start with, and then like I got really good at Yu-Gi-Oh. I topped a YCS. I got like 11th place at a 1,600 man tournament, and they gave me a booster box, and I'm like, what the hell? Like this is the worst prizing ever. So I quit Yu-Gi-Oh. I started playing a whole bunch of other games. Ended up in Force of Will in like 2016, and then I took that game to the cleaners. Like I was winning a whole bunch of tournaments. I won a world championship, and I'm like, all right, card games are really cool. So then I did some game design with Argent Saga, like I mentioned. Came back to card games. I've been playing a little bit of Magic. I topped 32 to Grand Prix right before the pandemic, and then pandemic happened, so I kind of stopped playing Magic. I did Battle Spirits last year, the Bandai game, and just took them for some money before that game is pretty much dead now. And then I'm like, all right, well, what are we doing? Is it Star Wars? Is it Lorcana? And then it's just like, I have some friends that aren't card game friends that are interested in Lorcana because it's that Disney game. So that's where I really was like, all right, we'll do that. And then I played Denver PPG last year and made top 4. And then I just kind of got out of it while Battle Spirits was happening. And I'm like, all right, set 3, Battle Spirits isn't happening anymore. Let's start focusing on Lorcana. And then getting that 5K win was like, all right, we're in there.
It's good. That's cool. Yeah, it's crazy how I don't know, like 15 years is like it's an eternity realistically.
Yeah,
but,
it's half a lifetime, right?
It's crazy. It's crazy. It really is when you think about it. And like even just the list of games, I can compare it in every single way, just with different games. So to hear like that same type of concept, like, yep, I started here, I went to this, I went to that, I had this, I had that. Like, it's funny how, like, to me as card gamers, this is just like this common theme that comes from so many. Like, it's so hard for us to like just say I played one game. Like
Mhm.
people that have only played Magic, I almost feel bad for them.
I
Like
do
because
feel bad for them. I don't know why you're still playing Magic. Like, Magic was invented in 1993. Like, do you understand how much better card games are now that weren't designed in the year 1993? Like,
yeah,
credit to Magic, they have the best card designers on the planet working for
insane,
them, and I think their sets are
insane.
like super interesting and limited is great. But if you're playing
Yeah,
constructed formats, play a different game. What are you doing? Love
yeah.
yourself.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy when you like I think you said it so wonderfully there. But it is one of those where I like for me it was World of Warcraft. Like, I was
Oh,
playing
I've
Magic.
only heard
I
good things
was
about that game.
Yeah, like I was young, right? So I was super young. I was only really playing like at F&Ms and things like that. I would take like literally 90-minute bus ride to play an F&M, which my mother didn't even know I was doing. That's how young I was, type of situation. And I remember the first time my friend came over to my house and he showed me World of Warcraft, and I'm just like, wait a minute, all of my cards are lands? And he's
Yeah.
like, yeah. I'm like, I literally went to the card store closest to me, sold my whole collection. I was like, I'm done. Like, I've never played with lands ever again, which
Yeah.
wasn't true. I eventually did, but you know,
It always
uh,
brings you back.
yeah. I think this is the longest I've gone not playing Magic since the last time I quit. So it's been like 7 or 8 years now since I've played since I bought a Magic pack, I should say. I've played
Proud of you,
Magic here
man.
and there,
Proud of
like Commander and crap, like every once in a while. I don't own any Magic cards, which is a lot to say because I own a lot of random card game cards. But um, it's crazy to hear because like there's so many games out there. Like it's yes, Magic is top, and it probably will be until it doesn't want to be, in my humble
you.
opinion.
100%.
It's just it has like that level of popularity that it's just not going to, unless it legitimately shoots itself in the foot or something, like it's just not going to go anywhere. And I feel like it's shot itself in the foot for the last 10 years and it hasn't gone anywhere. So but yeah, it's cool to hear. It's cool that you're able to adapt. You're able to, for me, family's a huge thing. So you're talking about going and spending time with your family to play in a Lorcana game is great. Your girlfriend got into the game, which is great. I respect that. My wife is playing the first game that she's ever played in her life. So it
That's
is
awesome.
really cool to see this IP come in and just be like, you know what, like we got a lot of potential here, and set champs are this weekend. Lorcana Challenge is in a few weeks. I mean, like 5 weeks from now at this
Yeah.
point. Are we pumped for those? Are we excited?
I think so. I'm still a little bit worried about the best of two. And I know like you never win two events in a row, so winning this one, I'm like, oh man, it's like I've already used up all my good luck and my high roll. But yeah, I'm really excited that it's gonna be like 2,000 people. Like I haven't been to an event that big
Yeah,
since before the pandemic, and like that I think is
yeah,
what I'm ready for, that kind of buzz again. You know what I mean?
yeah. That room is going to be like the moment where I saw they were announcing spectator badge. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
I was like, that's going to be a busy day. All right. The one thing that you wanted to talk about that we hadn't touched on at all is reprints in card games. So can we just touch on that real quick? Like, what is the importance of reprints in card games for you?
Reprints in card games?
Yeah, I meant, unless I'm reading this incorrectly. Let's say like in the next set we get a couple like
Oh, I was talking
cards.
about reprinting set one, like having more
Oh,
set
you just mean
one
like
booster
more and
boxes.
more cards. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
like
fine.
just doing or I don't know what it's called, like more print runs. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, print
not
runs.
like
Okay, so
reprinting
I
cards.
took it a little out of context. That's
No, that's
fine.
fine. That's fine.
The good news is like if you haven't heard this yet, there is a reprint or a reprint run coming with the set championship
I
boxes.
did hear that. Yeah, and I was like,
Yeah,
thank goodness.
so I heard somewhere in lines of 8 to 10 cases if the store wants it. I can't fathom why the store won't buy it if they can get it at their wholesale volume. So I think we'll see a pretty good influx of Chapter One come back. Ironically, I don't know if anyone really wants wants Rise of the Floodborn packs because there's
Yeah.
not a whole lot in there. But they're it's offered. It's there.
Yeah, for me, I just think that games should be. I just love card games, because we've been doing this for so long. Like the love is really there. It's not just the games that are interesting. It's just like I love the people that I play the games with, and I love being able to get more people into these games. It's just really hard to do that when I'm like, here, come play this set championship with me. They're like, oh, what decks are good? I'm like, well, there's this $600 deck, there's this $400 deck, but here's this $150 deck if you want to play exactly that deck and not have any other choices. Like it sucks being able to just be like your choice is limited by your budget and not by like like what you actually want to play. And
Yeah.
video games don't even have this kind of overhead on like getting into them. It just, I
Yeah.
understand that like it's a collector thing, but I just wish that games had a base price that was lower and more affordable, especially with just like the world being more expensive nowadays. You know, like I'm fortunate now being an elder gamer, I guess, where I'm starting to make
Yeah.
money and I can kind of play whatever I want. But if I
Right.
like card gamers aren't getting younger, you know, it's harder to get newer kids into the game because like part of it's they're on their phones, they've got the video games, they've got
Yeah.
Fortnite, but like why are they going to come to a card shop, spend their $30 to get a starter deck and then get blasted by someone like me? Like I wish they had my deck and we could play at an equal
Yeah.
level. I think that's more interesting.
It's actually really funny, to a bit of a close here, but I remember when I was talking to the Encounter. You were there a couple weeks ago
Yep.
playing in the 1K, and we were discussing this conversation about how it's so different than it was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Like 15 years ago, we were kids. We were going to card shops, and now you don't see kids in card shops. You really don't. Like
Missed out.
it's. I don't know if it's a pandemic thing. I don't. If your phone and your tablet and your PC just do everything that you wanted to anyway, it's more accessible. All those things, but it is one of those weird things to me that over the course of time, that's how card games made a living, right? Like introducing this 13, 14, 15-year-old kid into your game, and you can hook them forever. That's what happened to us, right? We got hooked. Like they got us.
Yeah.
We don't see that anymore. So it does have me a little bit scared for, I guess, this the card game world in general. Like if we're the last of a dying breed, type scenario, what does that mean for card games in 10 years? It's weird. It's weird. I don't know. We'll have to see how that plays out. But
I think we're on track to
all in
being
all,
like the retirement home playing bingo, but it's Magic the Gathering, you know? Like it's just gonna be an old person game. And
Com-
I would hate to see that happen.
Commander Knight with canes.
Yeah, like I don't know. I think we're on a negative track for the sake of making too much money, and I hope we can get back to getting kids into the game.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. We'll have to see. Well, sir, it has been a true blessing having this conversation with you tonight. I hope you enjoyed and had as much fun as I did. Of course, where can anyone find you if you want to be found? That's totally up to you. If you don't, we don't even talk about it.
Yeah, find me on Twitter. Ryan Effin Miles is the tag. I'm thinking about getting back into the content game and doing some stuff. I just love talking about card games and getting into Lorcana. I feel like I'm ready to start throwing some ideas out there. But follow me on Twitter if I start doing that. That's the best place to find me.
Sounds good. We'll have it in the description below. Thank you guys so much for watching today. Any additional comments for Ryan? Hit us up in the comments. And of course, as always,
I got
we'll
one
catch
more
you
thing,
guys.
actually. I forgot. I have to shout out my friend Pat Neary because he was also one of the
Okay.
people that really got me into it. And I told him I would shout him out because he watches your content all the time. So if I don't
Oh.
mention Pat Neary before I go, then he's gonna eat me alive. So shout out to Pat.
Well, the good news for me is that you had him. You literally kept him here the whole time.
Yep.
So good on the YouTube algorithm right there.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you guys so much for watching today. We'll catch you in the next one. See ya.